You know how oftentimes you have so many sources to listen to things from, to read from, to learn from? I think now um, we have such an abundance of and offered uh, information and all the opportunities to acquire it that it can be scary and confusing. What should you pick? There's so many communities you can enter to learn things. Which community should you enter and which should you skip? And it's never that obvious that you can just listen to someone and receive all the answers. Uh, and it's also not like that in your life, too. If you want to know something to figure out your own life, it's not like someone will tell you everything you need to know, and now finally you will know it. Now finally you won't need to learn everything for yourself, to think for yourself, to choose for yourself, to struggle for yourself. No, because finally you know these things and it all became easier. No, it's not going to be like that. Even if you will learn new information, the beauty of life is that it's always changing and moving forward, and so things come and go, and new things arrive. The unfamiliar things arrive. Things change. Um, we are slower oftentimes than the time is. So, and then the changes are for sure. So it's not like you will acquire some fixed knowledge which will be sufficient for each scenario, each circumstance of yours, each time frame. And so sufficient that you wouldn't really need any other information to acquire. And this is actually good news for you. It would mean that you need to learn constantly and to be engaged in your life. You need to actually think about your specific scenario that you're going through, about your own problems that are unique to the problems of other people, and that you have actually to use your agency and to take responsibilities for your decisions because uh, in the end, you do have some capacity at your hand which you are using, and your mental capacity, your conscious capacity to be aware of things, your physical capacity, etc. So you will be using something, and in other words, the life is um, on you. Your life is on you, at least in some part for sure. There are things you change, you influence, and uh, no one else could do it instead of you, right? So no matter what you will hear from other people or learn from other things, um, there is a your part to play, and you to blame if this information has not been sufficient for your personal case. So that's all to say that you would uh, have the necessity to operate by your own consciousness, by your mind, which is great. This is good news for you. You have to be engaged in your life and you have to make your own decision. You have to think with all this complexity of life that you're faced with. So, what to do about learning? Meanwhile, you have all this abundance of the uh, choices, information, and scenarios of your life. Uh, Abundance of people you meet, abundance of things that surprise you and confuse you, uh, abundance of doubts that you have. So, well, how are you going to make sense of it? What are you going to do? And especially, how are you going to learn? What should you learn? What should you know? Is there nothing to know if there's so many things to learn? Or is there something specific which would be more sufficient than something else in comparison? And those are the good questions I believe in. What it means is that the information you have gathered is in as much needed, or you as it can be used to what to make an actual change in how you live, right? So to be implemented, right? So perhaps another utility of the knowledge could be the uh, or metric of the utility uh, is the ability of it to be implemented, right? Or this success of its implementation. Let's say this could be a good metric. Because if you just learn something and now you don't see any way of implementing it, then you will soon forget it and nothing have changed because there is a limitation to your memory. And because also, well, there is a limitation to your cognitive capacities, to your brain, and you can't hold all the knowledge, you can't hold all information, especially if it doesn't um, play a role into adding a coherent picture of the world. Let's say to know that this mic has a handle, which you don't see, it's right here. You can say, well, it's useless to you, but I would say, well, it is useful to me because now I know what exactly holds this mic. The knowledge of the handle and its role is useful because it fulfills the picture of reality and it brings me coherency. It makes the world understandable to me. But if I would learn some new fact which wouldn't suit my frame of understanding of the world, picture of the world, then, well, it would rather confuse me and I would struggle to accept the fact because my experience kind of contradicts it. The picture I have built of the world, coming from my experience and knowledge, uh, contradicts the new fact that, let's say, I'm being told. Um, the example could be like, the example could be a person who is telling the other person that people are inherently kind and can be trusted, that they are born pure. Let's say this is like some person claiming it to be a true statement, a fact, and he's bringing it to the person of that has the frame of understanding that the world is the competition, that it's a struggle for power and dominion, that there is a weak and strong, and whoever wins gets it all, who loses uh, gets eaten, you know. And so, well, when this person whose whole experience been building this kind of picture of the competition for power receives the uh, information, the fact that, well, people are actually pure, he would not get it as, oh, I've learned it. Oh, okay, let me write down this fact. He would be confused. He wouldn't be able to find a place for this piece of information in his framework because he hasn't yet experienced it. Because he can't tie this meaning, this information, to anything real in life. And he also can find the implementation to this piece of information. Does it mean I can trust everyone? But I experience that I can't trust anyone. So how could it confuses me? The knowledge of it confuses me because I struggle to find the implementation, and also because, let's say, the experience um, of the reality that I have contradicts it, or my frame contradicts it, it doesn't mean that I'm the right one and the correct one, because I have a limited experience. This could be just a new experience, you know. Perhaps that person right and correct, and I'm just being in my kind of limited frame uh, of experience, can't just grab the meaning he's trying to tell me. And so I can be as well wrong, you know. But it is about that the knowledge is there for you to use it living your life, right? To You don't need any information about the world which you can't use. You need to build a picture about reality to live in it, to adapt to it, to know how to function in it, to have your questions answered, so all this uncertainty would become certainty and not be a threat to you, not be scary, so you could make your living, so you could survive, and so you could ensure your well-being. And this is the kind of information which you want. You want the information, I don't mean which suits your frame, not at all. But you need the information to live better, right? So you need the information which would make a change, right? Which would be valuable enough so as uh, when implemented, it's uh, it helps you because it's accurate, right? So let's say, okay, so you've been taught for a long time, let's say, that uh, uh, men are cruel, women are victims, and women are kind. You've been taught it for a long time. Let's say. Now you read something, let's say, with the in a book. First, let's take a book example. You read somewhere with the female being antagonist in the book. She has the awful kind of role there. She commits sins, and everyone around her struggles. And you read it and you like, something like changes within you. You start seeing the world from different sides, perhaps from which you was not seeing it yet, right? Not experiencing it yet. Um, right. And so, and what happens then? Well, you have acquired new information. Now, what would you do if it strikes you as something revelational, like something new which could be useful, which could even be unconscious? What you would do is kind of attack it to check its truthfulness, right? You would push it to trial, um, until it proves itself correct. So I don't know. Perhaps this uh, woman reader who well thought all females being not a threat. Now she receives the information, well, that they can be a threat too, pretty much. And she's like, well, stunned by it. Maybe she is uh, not accepting of this information, right? But perhaps then she lives her life and she experiences someone too, well, acting uh, hurting her. She experiences other female hurting her. And now this information reminds her of this experience. It's tied. It becomes uh, tied to something real, right? It's not only the concept in the mind, which is built by words. Now it becomes linked to the real her life experience. Okay, well, and now she's reminded about that case, and it reminds her, and she's like, oh, maybe that's real too. Okay. And what it does, basically, this information, is that, well, now she could change her behavior in how she treats other females. Maybe other females not necessarily equal friend for her. Maybe now females could also be equal as the potential threat, potential enemy, right? And so her behavior towards uh, the interactions with females would change, right? Uh, right, but let's now bring another example. And so it would, okay, first of all, it would change, and then if it would prove its correctness, then it also would kind of prove its utility. Yes, you can successfully implement this information. This is the world uh, you think it is, right? So the utility of information also lies in its accuracy, right? Uh, but let's say that the same girl, she just reads in the book about some um, species. She reads a book about new species, new sorts of species. Um, Now she doesn't live anywhere to interact with this species, nor to see this species. Uh, Maybe she Googles it once, sees the picture, okay, great, that's it. Now she doesn't live in the area, she never interacts with the species, and in 5 years, what do you think will happen? In 5 years, she's going to forget she ever read about it. What it tells us that the unnecessary information gets filtered, obviously. So until what matters remains, what truly matters remains. What truly matters? This is the question. Which information truly matters for you? And it is the information uh, which can be implemented in your life and would prove itself to be accurate. And yes, so uh, it would be the also the information which you would use, right? Um, you would use it, and while doing it, you would either prove or disprove its correctness. Well, that's also why it's hard to change someone's mind about the opinions he's been living by for a long time. This is why it's hard to change someone's belief, because he was living by this information for a long time. We don't just uh, hold the information in mind. We live by it. Because if we don't live by it, we get rid of, I mean, not we, but our brain gets rid of it. It forgets the unnecessary information, filters it down. Um, so, well, we live by the information. and the information we live by is the important kind of information. So that, and now getting exactly to the point of I'm having a snack here, so I'll be snacking while speaking. Forgive me for that. So, anyway, what should we know? What should we learn? We should learn what we would need to use in our daily life. The kind of information which would influence our daily life. So the more we use this information, the more we live by this information, the more valuable it is to us. So the goal is to find and to strive to the kind of knowledge which would influence the way you live, right? The kind of knowledge, again, you would live by, because you already live by some kind of knowledge that builds your perception. So you want the new knowledge either adapt to it or to crush insufficient knowledge, incorrect knowledge, inaccurate knowledge, outdated knowledge, and replace it. So the new knowledge would bring you greater efficiency, right? So you could live by it and live better. And when you understand that you live by the knowledge, you start to understand that the kind of knowledge you want would also depends on the kind of life you would want to have. So that's why people are completely biased, because the very knowledge that we acquire and filter is filtered for our motivations. It's completely dependent on our motivations. Are we motivated to live a fulfilled life? Let's say, what is fulfilled life even to us? Are we motivated to, let's say, okay, maybe we want a sort of well-being which would be something like a comfortable life, right? We have everything we want. Everything is certain, nothing is a threat. We are untroubled, and we live in abundance. Okay, so, well, then the knowledge we would need for this life could be different than if we would want to have a life as the game of competition. You want to prove yourself enduring. You want to prove yourself strong. You don't want comfort. You desire discomfort for greatness, let's say. Greatness that is not any sort of objective greatness, it's a sort of the relative greatness. You are greater than someone else. Basically, a game of competition. Now, for these, you could have absolutely need a different kind of knowledge. But here, the problem arises. Let's say the kind of knowledge you would need for this world, for this life that you live by. Maybe you need to see people as the threat, because then you can be more aggressive towards the competition. And so maybe you build in yourself the view of another person as of the competitor, of the potential threat, not to be trusted, um, and etc. Maybe even more negative attribution. Um, or so your perception is like that the world is inherently cruel, right? Because this information would probably help you to be pushing and enduring against it. Um, maybe you would need to believe that there is something you can change. The world is not deterministic. You can determine your own, let's say, life fate by amount of work you do. So a strong sense of agency, that's what you believe in. Because there is no 100% knowledge. This is also what is important to understand. It's the information that you operate with, which is so kind of probabilistic, and rightly so, because it's faster to operate by probabilities than by endless researches. You can't research out each of your beliefs all the time. And even if you would research it, you would do it all your life probably, because nothing can be proved as the 100% fact, coming that you only have your own box you operate with, right? Which you can't get out of. So anyway, you think in probabilistically, you believe in things, better to say. You believe in the information. And the information that you say you know and not to believe it is just the kind of information on which your life depends on as 100%. It depends on it to be accurate 100%. So you state that you know it because you have relied on it all of your life. You lived by it, and to continue on living, you need to rely on it to be the truth. And so you know it. Because not to know it would undermine your functionality, would undermine your life. For example, I know that I see the camera in front of me. Why? Because to state that I don't would be to undermine the trust in my senses. Yes, I know it. I don't believe in it, because if I would not believe the information that I receive from my senses with 100% probability, then it would just make me dysfunctional. So I state that I know it because I completely rely on this information to function. This information becomes necessity in my life and not a preference. And even more than that, it's that because I'm able to function with that, it gets continuously verified, cross-checked, and its truthfulness gets proven over and over. But this is taking from an example of the information we receive from our senses, right? But if we take the information of, let's say, ethical beliefs, moral beliefs, everything gets harder. And again, I'm saying that's why it's hard to argue with anyone on his moral views or on his opinions, because the deeper this information lies in their perception and in your perception, the more you live by it, the harder it is to change this information. Because because you have proven it to be accurate for a long time, living it, okay? you have proven your its accuracy by living it out uh, for yourself, of course, not for anyone else. Okay, let me have a sec. Okay, so now that's how we're not actually biased. It's just that, well, we live our life from our own body. We cannot to be biased. We have our hormones, we have our drives, our motives, which obviously contradict with others because it's our body, it's not theirs. That's why it's not a bias in any negative way. It's just that it will and is going to be different because your consciousness has one body, and the consciousness of that person has another, and so your different agents, your different bodies, you're going to have different things. And you live in yours, you have your motives, your thoughts, which other person's doesn't. So, well, are you going to be biased? Well, you're just going to be you. Okay, and it is going to be different from that person because you are different. Okay, well, now, um, same as with the information, with the perception, the knowledge that you hold. Um, right. You already have again the knowledge, you live by it, but you also in a need to learn more. You're in constant need to progress. So the question becomes, as how do you progress? This is important question, and I will need to return to your motivations. Is that you can shape your perception, your beliefs by the kind of life you want to have. This is a huge problem. I beg you to understand it because, um, look, what if the world is not that cruel as you make it because you need to, because you want to push yourself to the limits and win the competition? Um, Maybe the world actually is not that cruel as you convinced yourself. Maybe it's just your limited experience. Maybe there is much more of good things that you are not aware of because you live life a certain way. Okay, and so, well, here is the problem, is that you have your motivation and it gets on the way of an actual knowledge, of a truth beyond your motivation, of an objective truth. And you can choose to believe what you are motivated to believe and not what accurately represents the reality you live in. We can take it another way, maybe it will be easier for you. A moral person, a religious person, let's say, he wants to see um, mm, he wants to see that God is interested in him. Let's say a religious person, right? Let's moral person. We will talk about this. Take this example later. So theist, he believes in God, and he wants to believe that God has an interest in him. He perhaps loves him. He's special for God, right? And let's say because he wants to live a life of meaning, he wants to be important. He wants so that other people would be important too, right? So this information allows him to uh, consider the world as something, and his life as something meaningful, as something that is for a greater purpose that is beyond himself, beyond his pleasure. Um, right. But perhaps his experience could contradict that, well, God is that interested in him. Perhaps he cries in the night asking God to answer, and God just doesn't. And then he will ask himself, why? Maybe at least some sign, maybe at least something. And nothing is the answer. And he says, well, maybe I don't ask desperately enough. Maybe I'm not being that and that. And then he's completely desperate. He's in a situation that which he needs God the most, and he prays and he waits for the answer, but there is the silence on the other hand, uh, and and so uh, let's say reality proves itself slightly different from his imagination. And he's like, well, maybe there is God, but maybe if he wants to talk, maybe uh, he wants it to be another way, right? It seems like it. It can't be anything else. Like, if he doesn't answer, he probably wants to have it different. And so he should change his image of God, which would represent better his experience of reality too. And this is a problem too, because, well, your experience is limited. You can't shape reality into your one life experience. This is also the problem. But mm, but another problem becomes that, well, but if you won't consider your experience, then how else will you check any information that you receive? Muslim comes to you and says Quran is true, or something else. Another guy comes to you and says, well, this is true, or this is true, that is true. And the question becomes, well, how else are you going to check it if you don't want to spend whole life doing research? And the answer becomes, well, your experience, no matter how small and limited it is, you're still going to operate by it, obviously. And, well, it seems like um, at least some sort of alternative, Um, um, but the problem becomes that, even that religious person, he couldn't, if he would really be motivated, strongly motivated to live a life of meaning, let's say, where he is loved, or um, everyone loved, I don't know. And then he experienced something like this, where he's in complete need of God to answer something else. And he has a picture as a God being really open to people, let's say, right? But and he prays and in a strong need, and continuously, and doesn't receive any answer. So what does he do? I mean, in a positive scenario, of course, he would like adapt the image of God to suit his experience. Like, oh, well, God doesn't answer, though I actually being, asking in humility, begging, so I'm actually being loyal, and etc. And like, it seems that, well, God is not the way I imagined him to be, and he's the kind of God who wouldn't answer someone in a strong need. Maybe he is this sort of God, or maybe there is no God, let's say. So there is becomes the adaptation to experience. The knowledge, the information you received from your senses become also implemented and integrated into a coherent picture of the reality you have. But it could go a different way. He could choose to uh, refuse to believe in his, let's say, experience reality as by senses. He could refuse to look at this information that he receives by senses. Well, no one answers me. No one kind of helps me out when I'm in need, etc. And and to continue believing what he, let's say, been taught to, or what he is motivated to believe. Um, so it could go different ways, and it's also, I would say, when you do these stakes for the knowledge is also quite a risk on both ends, right? Because you can say, well, such a foolish man who disregards his experience. But on the other hand, is that uh, there is gonna there is many scenarios in lives when something doesn't support your experience, but it's still better for you to continue believing it than not believing it. It's like, well, you take a risk that your understanding is limited, let's say, that you don't understand something, because it's better than the alternative of completely losing the hope or something else. So it's kind of risk on both ends, because um, you can't get rid of your ground so easily. Let's say same goes for the relationship with like human relationships, right? You had the 20 years of your relationship with your, let's say, wife, and now uh, something happened and you're like, seems she's like doesn't answer to me. It seems that she's like means bad to me. What are you going to believe? Are you going to believe like these experience now, or are you going to believe 20 years of other experiences? That, well, maybe you're just misunderstanding it or something else. It's not. It doesn't mean that you completely dismissed the current experience, but it does mean that um, you just choose to stick to believing um, to something which you think has a deeper ground to it. Because it's also important to understand that nothing is chosen randomly. Even if it's unconscious reason, it's still a reason. There is a reason why people hold on to their beliefs. And the reason the person who cries out to God who's not answering still believes in God is just there is just the deeper reason which he has to actually do it. And it's very interesting to know what kind of reasons people do actually have. Um, so everything goes a little bit harder than we imagine it to be. We have a reason to believe in the things we believe. That's why it's hard to. Um, that's why it's hard to um, just debate and argue out the life, because the life is not about the words in themselves reductively. They are about the words which carry meaning, and the meaning that is lived in experience. And therefore, you can't just debate or argue out and win the words. It doesn't work like that. You have to show people that the experience which they lived by is somehow invalid. They somehow understand it wrong, and it's very hard to do, because now you should provide them the alternative that they would live by. Okay, But now coming back to the topic of knowledge. So I wanted to say all of it to show you that um, knowledge can be motivated by the kind of life you want to have. And it's not like in a negative way, it's always going to be motivated, again, as I stated. But it seems to me that knowledge and any sort of information serves the purpose as anything else in our life. That's why we want our lives to be purposeful, because everything else seems to serve some end. You know, it seems to have a function. It seems to um, have the potential of its for its utility. You know. Um, anyway, so does the information also serve the purpose? And then how you can know what to uh, learn is to ask yourself a question: what purpose do I want this information to serve? And this is very important to do because you can't learn everything again. You have limited time, limited resources on your hand, um, limited capacity, but oftentimes you still have multiple choices. So, of course, it's going to be hard for you to know what to choose because then you need to determine your goal. You need to determine the way you want to uh, uh, be heading to arrive to. That's why you're struggling to choose what to learn because you don't know your goal properly. So again, the knowledge serves the purpose, the information serves the purpose, and it's depending on what purpose do you want it to serve, which you can pick for yourself what to learn. And but there is also could be another type of approach is that whatever is that information which you operate by in your daily life is already important because you use it to live. You live by it again. And then the question becomes, well, how accurate is it? Right? And it's no longer just a question of your goal now, because now you understand, well, I operate with all this information anyway. But it can be that my understanding of the reality is not accurate. And so another purpose for you becomes the accurate representation of reality. And the action for this purpose would be to uh, cross check your perception, your current knowledge. So, which would mean um, you would want to see how it could be, let's say, not accurate for other people, and what are the reasons it's not accurate for them, let's say. Of course. So you basically want to look at the opposing opinions too, and to check whether they are they have sufficient reasons, you know. um okay, I have, oh no, I thought I have problems with mic. Or you could just reflect and reflect carefully whether the information you believe and the knowledge you have serves you sufficiently. And when you find the errors through the reflection, which they don't serve you sufficiently, then you can what can you do? You can search for additional information, which and exactly the kind of information which would answer these holes in your perception, these insufficiencies of your perception. Let's say what I want the world to be like is different from what I myself do. You know, I want people to be, uh, let's say, moral and kind, but let's say I myself um, am confrontational and, let's say, um, rude, as an example. So, well, now you see, well, your desired goal or picture of the world just contradicts your acted out actions. Why? Is there something wrong in your perception? Is it that you experience actually reality in a different manner than you tell yourself that you do? What are the reasons for this? And well, this is another way to know what you need to look at, is the reflection, to look for contradiction, to look for errors in your own perception. So first knowledge would be the knowledge with purpose, which serves the goal you have, that serves the end you've chosen for yourself. The second kind is the objective truth. So you could see your blind spots, so you could address the insufficiencies of your own narrative, of your own knowledge, so as, well, to fix it into sufficiencies and to improve your way of living and adapting to it properly too. And if you want to do that, actually, I have a good program for that. I have a program I kind of uh, developed myself, and it's all just started with this idea that it would be great for you to be able to see things you fail to see on your own, to check your knowledge for accuracy and truthfulness, uh, and find out what contradictions do you have between what you tell yourself is true and what's actually true, or what's you're actually believed to be true deep inside. And the program is called Hypocrite, free, available for everyone. A good way to reflect on what you perceive of the world and yourself and other people, to cross check your perception. And well, this will be it for this video. Uh, that was lots of discussions. So many thoughts. And it's always is quite hard to know what you need to learn. But again, think about what do you want to achieve and bring about with this knowledge. What purpose do you want it to serve? Do you want it to make you a moral human being, like a better human being in regards to your action towards other people? Or do you want it to make you more efficient? Uh, what do you mean then by efficiency? Do you mean you want to bring more money? So is it about you uh, monetizing what you do? What is it about? Or is it about um, you being able to understand someone else who you fail to understand, or to be able to carry out successfully the relationships that which would hard to do without the knowledge? What purpose do you want this knowledge to serve? And when you'll answer this question, it'll be easier for you to know what kind of knowledge do you need to reach out for. And the other kind is the desire for the truth outside of your perception, outside of even your self-narrowed goal. Accurate representation of truth which you fail to see, the errors and contradictions in your perception which you want to spot because they make the life harder for you. And well, that'll be it for this video.